Leo launched himself onto my bed like a tiny meteor, all elbows, knees, and absolute, devastating impact. It wasn't a cute, sleepy cuddle. It was a calculated strike. "Daddy, wake up! You're making me late," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had board meetings. I groaned, burying my face deeper into the pillow. "Leo, my love, it's Saturday. No school." He froze mid-pounce, processing, his brow furrowed with the immense responsibility of correcting me. "So, you're still slow. I want to eat and watch Baby Shark. 5 years old. All stern brows and stormy emerald eyes. Already carrying that cool, evaluative silence that made my omega instincts want to stand at attention, or bare my throat. I loved him so much it was a physical ache. Message received, General. He flashed a triumphant, gap-toothed grin and launched himself toward the kitchen. His footsteps a commanding thump-thump-thump across the worn linoleum. "I will help you. I'm this many now," he declared, holding up his whole hand, pinky trembling with effort. He smacked an egg against the bowl's edge. Shell fragments rained into the yolk. "I can do stuff." "You sure can," I said, fishing out a piece of shell with my finger. "You're doing all the stuff." He tried to look serious, but a proud smile escaped. It was a smile I didn't recognize, not mine. It belonged to a memory made of sharp angles, pale green eyes, and the ghost scent of a winter forest and clean iron. A memory I kept locked in a lead box at the back of my soul. I shook my head, clearing the persistent echo. Leo was staring at me. "Daddy, you got your look." "What look?" "Your faraway look. You get it when—" He paused, searching his 5-year-old vocabulary for the right weapon. "When you're thinking about before." My heart stuttered. "Before what?" He shrugged, suddenly very interested in the toaster settings. "Before me." The air left the room. My voice was a brittle whisper. "There is no before you, Leo. Everything good started with you." He looked up then, and in the clear morning light, his eyes were devastating. Not the soft, familiar brown of mine, but a luminous, piercing green. A direct, undeniable inheritance. "Daddy," he whispered, the commander gone, replaced by a small boy with a universal, aching curiosity. "How come I only have one daddy? Sam has a papa and a dad. Noah has 2 papas." I knelt, the cool floor biting into my knees, and took his sticky hands in mine. My voice was a fragile thing, fighting the automatic surge of omega compliance. "Because families come in all different shapes, Leo. Ours is a perfect shape. It's just our shape." "But is there one somewhere?" he pressed, his whisper now filled with the weight of a hope I couldn't bear. "An other daddy?" The truth was a live wire in my throat, sparking and dangerous. "Yes, there is. And he is a king in a world of monsters. And he can never, ever find you." I molded my face into the softest shape I could manage. "You have me. You have all of me, forever and always. That's the rule." Leo studied my face with an intensity that saw far too much. Then, in a sudden surge, he wrapped his arms around my neck, squeezing with a surprising strength. "I just want you to have help," he mumbled into my shoulder. "So you're not the only one." It shattered me. It rebuilt me. It left me breathless with a profound, terrifying love. I held him, breathing in his scent of childish sweetness and, beneath it, the unmistakable primal trace of future storm, ozone and raw iron. "I have all the help I need right here," I whispered into his hair. He pulled back, the moment passing as quickly as it came. His smile returning, bright and fearless. Blissfully, tragically unaware of the earthquake waiting to crack open our carefully constructed world. My chest swelled with pride. My blood ran cold with dread. On the afternoon we headed to the grocery store, I saw it. A sleek, black sedan. North side plates. Tinted windows so dark they swallowed the light and reflected nothing of the street. My scent gland prickled violently beneath the industrial-strength suppressant patch on my neck. It was a phantom pain, an omega alarm bell ringing after 5 years of silence. "No, it's nothing. Just a car. You're paranoid. But paranoia keeps you safe." I tightened my grip on Leo's hand, pulling him just a fraction closer. I fixed my eyes forward and walked, putting one foot in front of the other, a strenuous performance of normalcy. But I felt it, A pressure between my shoulder blades, a primitive omega deep knowing. The air itself was holding its breath, thick with the subtle, sterile scent of wealth and impending trouble. It wasn't him, not the father, but Northside plates meant someone or something watching, someone dangerous. I had run, I had hidden, I had built a fragile, beautiful life on a foundation of a single, desperate truth. No one could ever know who Leo's father was. Back in our apartment, I scraped the last of the blueberry yogurt from my bowl. Leo was in the living room again, thumping as he launched himself off the sofa arm. Another test of his tiny, budding alpha coordination. Leo was growing fast. A vibrant, loud boy who already carried the undeniable, almost painful confidence of a dominant male child. My scent gland, long trained into submission, sometimes twitched when Leo was near, catching the faint, clean scent of cedar and cold stone. A premature, potent echo of the pheromones he would soon wield. I pushed the thought away. The scent, the confident energy, the eyes the color of pale emeralds. They all belonged to a ghost, a highly privileged, unbelievably arrogant alpha who smelled of power and old money, and who clearly remembered nothing of our impulsive night 5 years ago. The sudden, aggressive blare of my phone on the counter made me jump. It was an unrecognized number, starting with the area code for the corporate North Side, territory controlled by the city's ruling alphas. The anxious knot in my stomach tightened instantly, ratcheting up the fear left by the black sedan. I swiped to answer, adjusting the faint, powdery scent of the suppressant patch on my neck. "Hello, this is Alex." The voice on the other end was smooth, cool, and undeniably alpha-serving. "Is this Mr. Alex Davies?" she asked, her tone entirely devoid of the warmth or omega compassion I was used to hearing. "It is. Who's calling?" "This is Ms. Harper, executive assistant to Mr. Liam Atherton, of Atherton Industries." My breath hitched. Liam Atherton, the heir, the most powerful, untouchable alpha in the city's largest dynasty. The man whose scent, even a faded memory, made my omega instincts want to fold in submission or bolt in terror. I see. How can I help, Mr. Atherton?" I whispered, feeling the familiar, shameful flush of heat crawl up my neck. "Mr. Atherton is currently in a closed-door meeting. However, he has been attempting to reach you, Mr. Davies, regarding a highly sensitive legal matter concerning a document he has just been presented with, a highly confidential paternity result." The word paternity landed like a physical blow, a dense stone stealing the last remnants of air from my lungs. The carefully constructed wall of anonymity I had spent 5 years building had been shattered by that single sterile sentence. The world outside the kitchen blurred. The colors of the cereal boxes swam. "I'm sorry, Ms. Harper. I think there's a mistake. I have no dealings with—" "You are mistaken, Mr. Davies," she interrupted. "The document pertains to a minor individual named Leo Davies, born approximately 5 years ago. The test confirms a 99.9% match. Mr. Atherton requires an immediate explanation." I didn't hear the rest of the sentence. I felt the cold shock running through my veins, dulling my senses to everything except the small, inquisitive face that peeked around the corner of the doorway. His emerald eyes were wide with curiosity. He was too alpha for our small flat, too handsome for my omega genes, too much of Liam Atherton to ever truly be hidden. "Daddy? Who was that?" His voice, sweet, clear, and bearing that faint, intoxicating undercurrent of cedar. Ms. Harper's voice snapped back into focus, laced with cold irritation. "He has just been informed that his forgotten mistake," she paused, making the word a deliberate weapon aimed at my omega status, "is now a 5-year-old child. Mr. Atherton expects you in his office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Do not be late." The line went dead. "He knows." I stared at Leo. My heart was trying to claw its way out of my chest, pumping raw, debilitating panic. Liam Atherton hadn't just found out about a child. He had found out about his heir. And an alpha like him wouldn't tolerate his son being raised in a small, cramped apartment by a lowly, sense-suppressing omega. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to be steady for Leo. "No one important, sweetheart," I managed, the lie tasting like ash. "Just work." Tomorrow, my job was to walk into the tower of Atherton Industries, a place reeking of unchecked alpha authority, and face the man who had the power to take my son. Forgotten mistake. That's what his assistant had called Leo, And that's exactly what I was too. I gripped the countertop until my knuckles were white, forcing the rising tide of Omega compliance back. The fear wasn't about money. It was about losing Leo to the superior alpha who held all the cards. My life as I knew it had ended the moment that woman had pronounced his name. Tomorrow I wasn't going to a meeting. I was walking into a battle for my son, and I knew I was terrifyingly outmatched. The next morning, the clock on the wall reads 6 a.m. In 3 hours, I would be standing in the heart of the city's most powerful territory, facing the man who didn't remember my name but legally sought ownership of my son. Couldn't sleep. I stood in the bathroom, staring into the mirror. My eyes were shadowed, my skin pale beneath the fluorescent light. I peeled off the old scent suppressant patch, a small, beige circle that had been my shield for years. The brief, cold air against my exposed skin was a stark reminder of what I was hiding. I carefully applied a new, industrial-strength patch, smoothing the edges down with shaking fingers. I couldn't risk revealing a sign of my anxiety. I needed to appear cool, professional, and entirely neutral. As I tied the knot of a cheap, stiff tie, a forgotten relic from a previous, optimistic job application, the tension in the silk brought the memory flooding back. The air was thick, suffocating, saturated with expensive cologne, powerful male energy, and the cloying scent of champagne. I was working coat check at the Atherton Foundation Charity Gala, my temporary beta passing uniform doing little to soothe my overactive nerves. It was the peak of my first, foolish heat cycle without proper suppressant management. I was supposed to be in bed, not surrounded by the city's most privileged elite. I saw him first. Liam Atherton. He stood across the massive ballroom, framed by 3 polished executives who deferred to his every gesture. He looked furious. His emerald eyes burned as he dismissed one of the men with a sharp, impatient hand gesture. The space around him didn't just hold power. It vibrated with it. His scent, pure, strong cedar, hit me even from that distance. It was intoxicating, dangerous. I retreated, pressing my back against the linen closet door, trying to control the humiliating flush rising on my skin. I was fumbling to readjust my inadequate suppressant when the door behind me burst open, slamming me into the wall. Get out! It was Liam. He was breathing heavily, his dark suit jacket rumpled, a glass of amber liquid held tight in his fist. He was radiating frustrated, controlled rage. I'm sorry, sir. I'm just trying to. I said get out. His tone was a raw command. His eyes finally focused on me, sweeping over my frame, and his energy, that dominating cedar, suddenly intensified. Spiked with predatory focus. He didn't see the coat checker. He saw someone who was vulnerable, who was cornered, who was desperately trying to mask a natural sweetness that his own anger now suddenly craved. You smell like rain and something sweet, he murmured, taking a predatory step closer. He didn't ask my name. He simply reached out and ripped the flimsy patch from my neck. The world dissolved into a wash of heat, shame, and desperate, suppressed need. The sudden, overwhelming rush of his presence, coupled with the exposed state of my own, erased all logic. The rest was a blur of a hastily booked, anonymous hotel room, desperate hands, and fierce, unyielding release. He used me to forget whatever crisis had consumed him. I used him to find a fleeting moment of primal release I'd been suppressing for months. When I woke up alone before dawn, the only evidence was the crisp $100 bill left neatly folded on the nightstand. A silent, transactional final word that cut deeper than any harsh word could have. I felt sick. I grabbed my clothes and ran, the scent of expensive hotel soap and regret clinging to me. I zipped up the cheap canvas bag containing Leo's favorite stuffed dinosaur, in case the meeting ran long, and my hospital ID. The memory of the $100 bill still stung like a fresh burn. That's all I was to him. A brief, expensive distraction. He hadn't even looked at my face that morning. He wouldn't recognize me now, but he would recognize his son. I tied Leo's shoes, kissing the top of his head. You be good for Mrs. Lee, okay, bud? I whispered, my voice rough. Leo's emerald eyes, the exact shade of Liam's, tilted up at me. You coming home after? Always, I promised, pulling him tight. I clung to the pure, comforting scent of him. My baby, my beautiful fight. I took a deep, shaky breath, straightened my cheap tie, and walked out the door toward the polished glass towers of Atherton Industries, carrying nothing but a bag and a desperation that was 5 years overdue. The forgotten distraction was no longer just a child. He was the reason I was walking back into the predator's cage. The Atherton Industries Tower was less an office building and more a monument to alpha superiority and wealth. Every visible surface was polished marble or cold, dark chrome. The air conditioning was set to a frigid temperature, and the entire space felt suffocating, an intimidating atmosphere of highly controlled power. My suppressed instincts screamed at me to bolt. I checked in at the pristine security desk, my voice too small in the vast, silent lobby. Alex Davies. Here for Mr. Atherton. The beta guard didn't meet my eyes. A moment later, Ms. Harper arrived. She was tall, impeccably dressed, and didn't offer a handshake or a smile. She simply gestured toward the elevator. 33rd floor, executive wing. Mr. Atherton is waiting. Her eyes flicked over my cheap suit with clinical disdain. And Mr. Davies? He expects punctuality. And brevity. The elevator ride was silent torture. My suppressant patch itched fiercely. I pressed my back against the mirrored wall, fighting the urge to inhale deeply. A pathetic, fearful response to the surrounding atmosphere. I am here for Leo. I am invisible. He will not smell me. The executive floor was quieter, the lighting dimmer. Ms. Harper led me past enormous, silent offices to the corner suite. Mr. Atherton is ready for you now, she said, opening the heavy door without knocking. She simply stepped aside. I walked into the office. It was vast, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. And there he was, Liam Atherton. He stood silhouetted against the bright morning sky, powerful and immovable. His suit was tailored perfection. His presence, that pure, dominant cedar, was overwhelming even through my suppressants. He turned slowly. The morning light caught his features. The sharp jawline, the arrogant set of his mouth, and those devastating, cold emerald eyes. He didn't move. He didn't offer a greeting. He simply looked at me. A long, clinical assessment that chilled me to the bone. Mr. Davies, he finally said. His voice was a low, resonant baritone that commanded silence. It was more terrifying than the drunken snarl I remembered. Mr. Atherton, I replied, managing to keep my voice from cracking. He walked to his massive mahogany desk, movements economical and precise. He picked up a single sheet of paper, the paternity report, and laid it down with a crisp, final sound. I prefer to cut to the chase. This document confirms a 99.9% match between myself and a 5-year-old minor, Leo Davies. He paused, letting the weight of the years settle. Born on the precise date corresponding to the incident 5 years ago, he finally looked up, fixing those emerald eyes on me. I don't recall you. Not your face, not your name. But I recall the location, the time. You were the coat check attendant. And you are, apparently, an Omega. The word was delivered with subtle contempt, an accusation of weakness and deception. The air felt too thin. I forced myself to stand tall. Yes, I am. And yes, I was there. There was no deception. You initiated the encounter. I left before dawn. I never contacted you. Liam raised an eyebrow, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. That much is evident. Your choice to withhold the existence of my heir for 5 years is, however, highly negligent. And actionable. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on the desk. The intensity of his gaze felt like a physical weight. Let me be clear. Whether or not I recall your name, I do not tolerate deceit concerning my bloodline. Leo is a male child. He is mine. This situation will be rectified. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a neatly folded document. This is a claim for full custody, effective immediately. However, I am willing to offer an alternative. He placed a second document beside it. A comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a generous financial settlement, provided you agree to relinquish all parental rights and sever contact with the boy forthwith. The world narrowed to those 2 pieces of paper. Relinquish my rights? The fear gave way to a white-hot spark of defiance. Leo is my son, I whispered, the words shaking but fiercely held. I raised him alone for 5 years. Liam's face hardened. His controlled presence spiked, suddenly sharp and demanding. You, an unsupported Omega, cannot provide the environment my heir requires. You were a one-night distraction, Mr. Davies. Leo is not. He is an Atherton. And I am claiming what is mine. He slid the documents toward me. Sign the NDA, take the money, or face my legal team. The choice is yours. My hands flew to the edge of the desk, gripping the polished wood until my knuckles were white. I leaned forward, meeting his cold gaze with a fire that surprised even myself. You don't claim people, Mr. Atherton. Leo is not a corporation you can acquire. He is my son. My voice trembled but held steady. I raised him for 5 years without your knowledge, without your money, and without your overbearing presence polluting our life. You think a signature and a briefcase of cash can erase that? Liam's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. Your emotional outburst is precisely why you are unfit. Leo needs stability, resources, the legacy only his father can provide. And who gave you the right to run a paternity test on my child? I demanded, desperate for footing. Who knew enough about me to even start this search? Liam paused, a flicker of annoyance at being forced to deal with trivialities. It was Julian Vance. My blood ran cold. Julian Vance, Liam's childhood best friend. The man who had shadowed him at the gala, who had shot me a strange, calculating look. A successful executive with a notorious jealousy of anyone who came too close to the Atherton orbit. He noted the lack of a paternal surname on your Omega registry. Liam continued, his tone dismissive. Being a conscientious friend and counsel, he investigated the timeline. Your last known location coincided with your son's conception. You were sloppy, Mr. Davies. My vision tunneled. It wasn't a random search. It was a targeted, malicious act by someone who wanted to cause trouble. I took a deep, steadying breath, letting the rage settle into solid resolve. I looked at the sleek NDA, then back at Liam, his expression utterly detached. I will not sign it, I stated clearly, pushing the documents back across the vast expanse of mahogany. Unleash your legal team. I may be a poor Omega, but Leo is my child. I will fight you until I have nothing left. We will see who the courts believe is the better parent. The one who stayed, or the one who paid for his mistake and forgot it. I turned. I didn't wait for his reply. I walked straight for the door, my legs shaking but my spine straight. The immense power of the room pressed against me, but I refused to break stride. I walked out of Atherton Tower and didn't stop until I was swallowed by the chaotic, anonymous rush of a street corner 3 blocks away. My spine was still rigid, a rod of defiance, but my hands trembled violently in my pockets. The phantom scent of cold cedar and polished power burned in my lungs. It was just after 9:30 a.m. The confrontation, the shattering of my life, the declaration of war, had lasted less than 30 minutes. The hours that followed were a blur of paralyzing dread. I walked, directionless, until my feet ached, staring into shop windows but seeing only Liam Atherton's merciless emerald eyes and the stark, typed lines of the custody agreement. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to pack our lives into 2 bags and disappear again. But the rational part of my mind, the part that had built this fragile life, knew it was too late. He would find us. Fighting him felt impossible. Running felt futile. Exhaustion, deeper than bone, finally drove me home. I caught the bus back to our neighborhood just before 3 p.m., scraped raw and terrifyingly small. I picked up Leo from Mrs. Lee's, forcing a smile as she handed me a sheaf of crayon drawings and his slightly sticky jacket. He was a delight, as always, she said. Her warm, grandmotherly Omega sent a balm for a moment. Asked about you a few times. Back in our apartment, I tried to find solace in the worn sofa, the faded rug, the sunbeam cutting across the dusty floor. But today, our nest didn't feel like a sanctuary. Felt fragile, exposed, waiting to be discovered. I was helping Leo into his pajamas, a ritual that usually grounded me, when the knock came. It wasn't Mrs. Lee's gentle tap. It was 3 sharp, precise raps on the door that vibrated through the thin wood and straight into my sternum. My blood turned to ice. Who's that, Daddy? Leo whispered, wide-eyed. Stay here. I breathed, my voice barely audible. And there he was, Liam Atherton, in my dim hallway, utterly out of place. A masterpiece of charcoal wool and severe lines against peeling beige paint. His expression was cold, precise, and measured. A leather folder held in one gloved hand. The papers. He had come to finish what he started. Panic, sharp and sour, flooded my mouth. couldn't let him in. But not answering would change nothing. He would wait. He would break down the door. He owned the world. With a trembling hand, I turned the lock and opened the door just a crack, blocking the view inside. "What are you doing here?" I hissed. My Omega instincts screamed in submission at his proximity, at the wave of that devastating cedar scent. "You left before our business was concluded," he stated, voice low and devoid of warmth. "We have matters to settle. Now." His gaze swept past me, into the apartment, evaluating the territory as if it were a spreadsheet. "Invite me in, Mr. Davies, or we continue this in the hall. Your choice." Defeated, I stepped back, letting him cross the threshold. The entire apartment seemed to shrink under the weight of his presence. He had just opened his mouth to deliver another ultimatum when a small voice piped up from behind the sofa. "Daddy? Who's the tall man?" And then Leo stepped into full view. Time stopped. Liam froze. The leather folder hung forgotten at his side. Every bit of calculated arrogance, every line of cold intent, evaporated. Shock, awe, and something utterly human replaced it. Leo stood there in dinosaur pajamas, hair damp, one small hand clutching his stuffed triceratops. He looked up at Liam, curious and unafraid. Liam's breath caught audibly. His chest tightened. That flawless mask of dominance fractured, revealing something raw and unprepared, stunned, almost painful vulnerability. He devoured every detail. The small jaw stubborn like his own, the confident stance, the curious intelligence in those devastatingly familiar eyes. He saw his own blood, his own legacy. He stepped forward, hesitated, then froze, as if touching Leo might shatter the moment. Leo, sensing the focus, tilted his head. He looked from Liam to me, then back. A tiny, tentative hope shone in his eyes. "Are you my new daddy?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, yet it rang in the tense room like a bell. The question hit Liam like a thunderclap. His emerald eyes flickered from Leo to me and back, chest rising and falling rapidly. The custody papers were a weapon in his hand, yet they felt meaningless now. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He just stared at his son, the heir he'd come to claim, and for a long, silent moment, the only sound in the room was the frantic beating of my own heart. The silence that followed Leo's question was absolute. It pressed down on the worn living room rug like a physical weight. I watched, heart hammering, as minute tremors passed through Liam Atherton's imposing frame. His gaze was locked on Leo, a torrent of unreadable emotion swirling in those emerald depths. Shock, recognition, dawning awe, and beneath it all, a flicker of profound, unwelcome guilt. He slowly, almost mechanically, lowered the leather folder to his side, attention fully captured by the small boy in dinosaur pajamas. The corporate alpha, the king in his tower, had vanished. In his place stood a man confronted with a living, breathing piece of his soul he never knew existed. Leo, impatient with adult silence, took another small step forward. "You have my eyes," he declared, not as an accusation, but as a fascinating discovery. That simple observation seemed to break Liam's paralysis. He blinked, and when his eyes met mine over Leo's head, the cold arrogance was gone, replaced by stark, unsettling confusion. He looked lost. Liam's voice, usually commanding, was rough and used to uncertainty. He cleared his throat, eyes flicking back to Leo. "Yes, I suppose I do." It wasn't an admission of paternity, not explicitly, but it was a seismic shift. He had acknowledged the connection. "Leo, sweetheart," I interjected, voice trembling, trying to regain some control. "This is Mr. Atherton. He's an acquaintance from downtown. We had a meeting today. Didn't you buy him to be my other daddy? I really want to have two daddies." Leo turned his piercing gaze to Liam. "Do you know how to fix sinks? Our sink drips, and Daddy says it's a tricky beast." The absurdity of the question, the sheer domestic normality, dismantled Liam's defenses further. He stared, utterly unprepared. "I employ people who fix sinks," he admitted finally, the statement ludicrous in its honesty. Leo nodded sagely. "That's a good idea. Daddy tries, but the wrench is bigger than my arm." Then he did the unthinkable. He walked right up to Liam, well within the space usually reserved for board members and terrified subordinates, and held up his stuffed triceratops. "This is Rex. He's for big feelings. Do you have a dinosaur? Liam looked down at the toy, then at Leo's earnest face. Slowly, hesitantly, as if handling priceless china, he touched one of Rex's worn fabric horns. No, he murmured softly. I do not have a dinosaur. You can share Rex sometimes, Leo decreed, then lost interest in the social niceties. I'm hungry. Daddy, can we have pancakes? Even though it's not morning, it was a blatant ploy for a treat, a normal piece of our chaotic, loving life now playing out in front of the most dangerous man I knew. Liam was no longer looking at Leo as an asset. He was looking at him as a child. His child. Liam's eyes snapped to mine. The intensity was back, but it had changed. It was no longer about legal claims. It was a silent, demanding question. What happens now? The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. He was in my world, governed by bedtime and dinosaur names, and completely out of his depth. Mr. Atherton was just leaving Leo, I said firmly, finding courage in routine. But Liam didn't move. He was still looking at Leo, who was now patting his stomach dramatically. Pancakes are serious business, Liam said, the words strange and stiff. Like he was speaking a foreign language. He was trying. The effort was agonizingly obvious. Leo beamed. See, Daddy? Serious business. Liam finally lifted his gaze to mine. The leather folder felt heavier in his hand. He looked from my defiant, terrified face to Leo's hopeful one, and something in his jaw tightened. Not with anger, but with a new, daunting resolve. Perhaps, Liam said, regaining a fraction of his usual command, the business can be discussed at another time. He wasn't talking about pancakes. He didn't hand me the papers. He simply held them at his side. His parting look was not a threat, but a promise. A terrifying, open-ended one. I will be in touch, Mr. Davies, he said then, almost as an afterthought. His eyes flicking to Leo, he added, Goodbye, Leo. Bye, Mr. Atherton. Leo chirped, already racing toward the kitchen. Can we put blueberries in them, Daddy? The big ones. Liam Atherton gave one last, long look. The small boy, the warm, cluttered apartment, the life he had never been part of, and then turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. The silence he left was different. Not relief, but a calm before a storm of a different kind. The legal battle still loomed, but the battlefield had shifted. He had seen Leo. He had spoken to him, and he had not demanded I sign the papers. The next morning dawned with a fragile, deceptive normalcy. Leo chattered about dinosaurs and blueberries. The encounter with the tall man, already folding into his worldview as a curious but unremarkable event. For me, every sound in the hallway was Liam's knock. Every ring of my phone a summons from Ms. Harper. But the call that came at 10 a.m. was not from the Atherton Tower. It was from an unknown number, and the voice on the other end was Liam's, stripped of its corporate resonance, speaking directly and with a startling lack of preamble. Davies, we need to talk. Not in my office. Not in your apartment. Neutral ground. There's nothing to talk about, I said, my grip tightening on the phone. You saw him. That doesn't change anything. It changes everything, he countered, his voice low and intense. And you know it. I'll be at the Glass House on 12th at noon. If you don't come, my next visit won't be so informal. I'll bring my legal team to your doorstep. Your choice. The line went dead. The threat was clear, but the venue was curious. The Glass House was an upscale, quiet cafe known for its privacy, not a corporate war room. I went, of course. The image of suited lawyers crowding our hallway, terrifying Leo, was enough to get me there. I wore my own armor. Jeans, a simple sweater, my scent patch firmly in place. He was already there, seated at a secluded corner table, back to the wall. He looked different again. Still powerful, still immaculately dressed, but the cold fury of the tower was gone. He looked focused and strangely, almost agitated. A simple manila folder lay before him, not the leather-bound decree. I slid into the chair opposite him. Well, he didn't waste time. He opened the folder. Inside weren't legal documents, but what looked like plans, architectural sketches, a color-coded schedule, a list of names with credentials. This is untenable, he began, his finger tapping the top page. A blueprint of what was clearly a child's bedroom, lavish and perfect. Your apartment is inadequate. The school district is subpar. Your financial situation is precarious. Leo deserves security, the best education, exposure to his heritage. The old anger flared. He deserves love. He has that. In abundance. Liam's jaw tightened. Love is not a roof that doesn't leak. Love is not a future. I am not proposing to remove you from the picture. The words seemed to surprise him as he said them. He pushed the blueprint aside, revealing a different document, a draft agreement. I am proposing a transitional arrangement. Joint legal custody. Primary physical residence remains with you, for now. He spoke the concession as if it pained him. But he spends weekends with me, at the Atherton estate. He will have his own rooms, grounds to explore, tutors to supplement his education. You will have a monthly stipend to ensure his needs are met without strain. I stared at him. This wasn't the all-or-nothing demand of yesterday. This was a blueprint for infiltration. You want to buy your way into his life, slowly, so he gets used to the luxury, so he starts to prefer it. His eyes flashed, not with anger, but with a fierce, undeniable honesty. I want to know my son. He asked me if I had a dinosaur. I have an entire wing of a natural history museum I can show him. Is that a crime? He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You hid him for 5 years. You denied me every first step, every first word. You do not get to deny me now. This, he gestured at the papers, is me not tearing your world apart with lawyers. This is me trying to build a bridge. However inconvenient you find it. The raw admission of loss in his words, denied me every first step, hit me with unexpected force. I had been so focused on my fear, my survival, that I had never considered his perspective as a deprivation. He was still an arrogant ass, but for the first time I saw the wound. Weekends, I whispered, the battlefield shifting under my feet again. Starting this Saturday, I will pick him up at 9 a.m. You will provide a list of his routines, dietary preferences, fears. It was an order, but it was also a request for a manual, a guide to our son. And if I say no? He sat back, his expression closing off. Then we revert to the previous option. Full custody battle. I will use every resource to demonstrate your environment is unfit. And I will win, Davies. You know I will. It was a brutal, calculated checkmate. He was offering a path that kept Leo mostly with me, but it came at the cost of allowing him in, of letting Leo be shaped by that world, by him. My Omega instincts warred within me. The protective urge to keep my pup safe in our nest, and the deeper, primal understanding that an alpha father, especially this alpha, was not inherently a threat to his own child. That his presence could, in a way I hated to admit, provide a security I never could. I looked at the schedule. Saturdays and Sundays. Overnights. I imagined Leo in that vast, cold estate, confused and missing me. But I also remembered the awe in Liam's eyes, the soft way he touched Rex the dinosaur. I go with him, I said suddenly, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. The first time. I bring him, I stay for the day, I bring him home. So he knows it's safe. So I know it's safe. Liam studied me for a long, tense moment. A flicker of something, respect, annoyance, crossed his face. He gave a single, sharp nod. Agreed. This Saturday. You will both come. We'll have lunch. He closed the folder, the negotiation seemingly concluded. As I stood to leave, feeling dizzy, he spoke again, his voice quieter. The sink, he said. I turned. He wasn't looking at me, but straight ahead, his profile stern. The one that drips. I'll send someone to fix it tomorrow. It's a waste of water. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't kindness. It was a statement of fact, and an undeniable first step across the bridge he claimed he wanted to build. I left with the unsettling knowledge that the war was over. Saturday arrived wrapped in a thick, gray drizzle that matched the anxiety coiling in my stomach. Leo, of course, was electric with a chaotic blend of excitement and nerves. Does the tall man have a big house? Bigger than the playground? Will there be other kids? Do I call him Mr. Atherton or something else? I packed his small backpack with the solemn care of a soldier preparing for an unknown campaign. Rex the dinosaur, a change of clothes, his allergy medication. Each item felt like a piece of our home I was sending into the void. Liam's black sedan pulled up at 9 a.m. exactly. Not the sleek sports car I might have expected, but a substantial, quiet vehicle that spoke of security over flash. A driver held the door, but Liam himself stepped out. He was dressed differently again, dark jeans, a charcoal sweater under a tailored coat. The attempt at casual was almost more intimidating than his suits. It highlighted the sheer, unreachable physicality of him. He nodded at me, a tight, formal gesture, before his gaze dropped to Leo. "Good morning, Leo." Leo, clutching my hand, stared up at him. "Good morning. Your car is very shiny. Does it have a name?" A faint, almost imperceptible line appeared between Liam's brows. "It's a vehicle. It doesn't require a name." "Mine's named Bumpy," Leo said, referring to his toy taxi. He seemed to accept this philosophical difference. He then looked at the open car door and back at me, his bravado faltering. "You're coming, right, Daddy? You promised." "I'm coming," I said, my voice firm. I met Liam's eyes over Leo's head. "The deal." "Of course," Liam said smoothly, gesturing for us to enter. The interior was a capsule of silent luxury. Leo immediately scrambled to touch every button and surface, asking the driver a rapid-fire series of questions about the engine. Liam watched him, not with annoyance, but with a sort of fascinated bewilderment. The Atherton estate wasn't a house. It was a compound, gated, shrouded in mature trees. It emerged from the rain as a series of modern, angular structures of glass and pale stone. It didn't look lived in. It looked curated. We entered through a towering double door into a soaring foyer. The air was still and scentless, like a museum. Leo's footsteps echoed on the polished concrete floor. He went very quiet, his small hand creeping back into mine. "This is a very big," he whispered. Liam seemed to notice the chill, both literal and atmospheric. "This way," he said, his voice echoing. He led us not into a vast formal living area, but down a corridor to a smaller, sunken room lined with books. A fire crackled in a modern fireplace. It was still intimidatingly elegant, but it held a trace of warmth. "Would you like to see your rooms?" Liam asked. Leo looked at me and I gave a stiff nod. "Okay." What followed was a surreal tour. The rooms were a child's fantasy designed by a minimalist architect. A bedroom with a bed shaped like a racing car. A playroom stocked with every educational toy imaginable, all pristine and untouched. A connected bedroom and bath, slightly more subdued, were pointedly indicated as "for your father," should he ever need to stay. It was a display of power, but also a plea. "Look what I can give him." Leo was wide-eyed, running his fingers over the smooth surface of a puzzle map of the world. "It's very cool," he said with diplomatic politeness. Then he turned to Liam. "Where are your things?" Liam blinked. "My things?" "Your pictures, your socks, your cereal." Leo elaborated as if it were obvious. "Does your house have a kitchen?" For the third time, I saw Liam Atherton disarmed by a 5-year-old's logic. The house was a showcase, not a home. It lacked the clutter of life. "It has a kitchen," Liam said, a defensive edge entering his voice. "We will have lunch there shortly." Lunch was a silent, awkward affair in a dining area that could seat 20, served by a staff member who seemed to materialize from the walls. Leo struggled with the oversized cutlery. I pushed food around my plate. Liam watched us both, his earlier confidence seeming to drain away with each quiet clink of silverware. It was after lunch, back in the library, that the breakthrough happened. Bored with the tense adults, Leo discovered a large, ornate chess set displayed on a side table. "What's this game?" "Chess," Liam said, perking up slightly. "It's a game of strategy. For mine's much older than yours." "A challenge." Leo's eyes narrowed. "I have a big mind. Daddy says so. Teach me." Something like a real, genuine emotion flickered across Liam's face. Interest. He moved to the table. "Very well. These are the pawns." I sat on the sofa, forgotten, as Liam began to explain. His voice lost its stiffness, becoming low and focused. Leo listened with intense concentration, then promptly tried to move a knight like a checker. Liam didn't correct him with impatience, but with a slow, deliberate demonstration. "This piece moves in an L. See? It's unconventional. It can surprise you." He was talking about the knight, but his eyes flicked to me, and the double meaning hung in the air. For 20 minutes, they huddled over the board, an island of quiet connection in the vast, cold house. Leo laughed when Liam let him capture a queen with an illegal move. Liam didn't smile, but the severe lines of his face softened. When it was time to go, Leo surprised us both. He walked up to Liam, who was now kneeling to his level to put the chess pieces away. "Thank you for the lunch and the game, Mr. Atherton," he said formally. Then, impulsively, he threw his small arms around Liam's neck in a brief, tight hug. Liam froze, his hands hovering in the air, utterly paralyzed by the contact. He didn't hug back, but he didn't pull away. He simply absorbed it, his eyes wide and shocked, fixed on the wall across the room. When Leo let go and skipped back to my side, Liam slowly stood. He looked shaken. He looked at me, and the naked, unguarded emotion in his gaze was more terrifying than any threat from the tower. He had just felt his son's arms around him. The blueprint, the plans, the money, none of it had prepared him for that. "I'll have James drive you home," he said, his voice strangely thick. He didn't walk us to the door. He just stood by the chessboard, a king surrounded by empty squares, watching us leave. In the car, Leo chattered about the chess pieces. I was silent, replaying that hug. The occupation wasn't just political anymore. It was personal. Liam Atherton wasn't just claiming an heir. He had just been ambushed by love, and he had no defenses against it at all. The uneasy truce established in the Atherton library shattered 2 days later, not with a roar, but with a quiet, sickening finality. It was Tuesday morning. I was running late for my shift at the neighborhood clinic, still reeling from the emotional hangover of Saturday's visit. Liam had called Sunday evening not to talk about Leo, but to give me his private number, an act of staggering intimacy he'd masked as logistical necessity. I arrived at the clinic, clocked in, and was immediately summoned to the office. "Alex, I'm so sorry," Mrs. Diaz, the clinic manager, began, her face etched with regret. "We have to let you go. Effective immediately." My blood ran cold. "Why? I haven't had a single complaint." "It's not performance," she sighed, sliding a pre-typed termination letter across the desk. "It's legal pressure. This letter cites significant discrepancies in personal and residential records that pose an unmanageable risk to our liability. A very unpleasant man called here yesterday. A lawyer. He was asking questions about your financial stability, your previous employment gaps, and why your child's paternity records were sealed. He made it clear that if we continued to employ you, the clinic would face a costly audit and potential lawsuits." My hands flew to the termination letter. Julian Vance. This wasn't Liam's work. It was a flanking maneuver by a jealous enemy, leveraging Liam's wealth to destroy my stability. By making me financially destitute, Julian ensured Liam would be forced to take full custody, removing me from the picture completely. I walked out an hour later, unemployment papers clutched in my hand. The rage was immediate, blinding, and terrifying. Julian Vance hadn't just taken my job. He had struck at the foundation of the very life I was fighting to defend. I didn't call a lawyer. I called Liam. "Vance?" I spat into the phone, ignoring any pleasantries. "Julian Vance just had me fired from the clinic. He's using your name and your resources to make me unfit. He's destroying my ability to provide a stable home for Leo." The silence on the line was different this time, not the bewildered silence of the father, but the absolute cold stillness of the predator. "Where are you?" Liam's voice was low and deadly. "Home. I just picked up Leo. Stay there. Do not speak to anyone. I'm coming to you." Liam arrived 30 minutes later, skipping the sedan and driving himself. He strode into the apartment with the briefcase again, but this time, the document he pulled out wasn't a custody agreement. It was a pre-drafted non-disclosure agreement and cease and desist order aimed at Julian Vance. "He acted without my knowledge, but he used Atherton assets and influence," Liam said, his jaw rigid. "He is a fool who confuses loyalty with sabotage. He views anyone close to me, particularly an Omega who produced an heir, as a threat to his position." He paced the small living room, the space shrinking under his fury. "His attack is public, Davies. He likely briefed a journalist. If he succeeds in proving you are unfit before we establish joint custody, a judge will award me full, uncontested guardianship immediately." The harsh truth punched the air out of my lungs. "So what do we do? I have no job. I can barely afford the rent this month." Liam stopped pacing and looked at me, not with pity, but with a fierce, demanding respect I hadn't seen before. "We fight him together," Liam stated. "You are the target, but I am the objective. We need to present a united front before he can leak the termination letter. You will move into the estate. Immediately." "No," I said instantly, shaking my head. "Leo and I are not moving into your museum. This isn't a request, Alex," he snapped, using my first name for the first time. The intimacy of it felt like a jolt. "It's necessary for security and stability. Julian won't stop at your job. He'll attack your housing, your credibility. We stop his attack on Leo by proving that Leo has two dedicated parents residing together, providing a superior environment. We are fighting a legal war, and we must manipulate the optics." He tossed the cease and desist document onto the table. "I need you to be my partner in this defense, Alex. I need your knowledge of Leo, and you need my shield against the filth Julian is about to throw. We will maintain separate quarters, separate lives. But we present the family until Julian is destroyed and the custody is settled. Do you understand?" I looked down at the document, then back at Liam. He was offering a terrifying, necessary lifeline. He wasn't trying to possess me. He was trying to protect his son through me. "I understand," I whispered, nodding. "But if you try to replace me as his father, even for a second, I will expose every detail of our encounter and your negligence to the press." A sharp, almost relieved smile touched Liam's mouth. "Fair enough. Now pack Rex. You have 1 hour." Moving into the Atherton estate was surreal. It was a cold, imposing place, but now it was our cold, imposing place. Liam had quickly arranged for an entire wing to be prepared, connecting our temporary rooms but ensuring separate living spaces. The first few days were tense, dominated by legal calls, school visits conducted together, and meticulous planning for Leo's first therapy appointment. We were a team, a functional unit of strategy and shared purpose, bonded only by Leo's safety. It was late Friday evening. Leo was asleep in his race car bed, and Liam and I were reviewing legal notes in the library. The atmosphere was calm, professional, until I saw the small, faint tear in the elbow of his sweater. I reached out, instinctively touching the expensive cashmere. "That's going to unravel," I murmured. "You need to stitch it." Liam looked down, surprised by the touch. "It's a sweater, Davies. I'll have my valet replace it." "That's wasteful," I said, pulling my hands away. "And unnecessary. I can fix it." I went to my room, found my small sewing kit, and returned. I sat opposite him, pulling a thread through the wool with focused concentration. The quiet domesticity of the act was shocking, completely out of place in his fortress. Liam watched me. He didn't review documents. He just watched my hands, the steady, focused action. "You're a good parent, Alex," he said finally, his voice low. "I was wrong to judge you solely by your financial status." "Thank you," I said, not looking up. When I finished, I handed the sweater back. The mend was nearly invisible. Liam took the sweater, his fingers brushing mine. This time, neither of us flinched. He held the repaired wool, looking at the tiny stitch, then back up at me. "I wasn't just wrong about your parenting, Alex," he murmured, the cold facade finally crumbling. He reached across the table, not for the papers, but for my hand. His touch was warm, certain, and utterly shattering. "I was wrong about everything that night, 5 years ago. I should have turned around. I should have asked your name." He gently turned my hand over, looking at the worn skin, the practical strength of my fingers. His eyes, those devastating emerald mirrors of my son's, were dark with regret and a sudden, undeniable desire that mirrored the intensity of that long-ago night. The legal strategy, Julian Vance, the custody battle, it all faded into the background. There was only the sound of the crackling fire, the heavy cedar scent, and the undeniable recognition of two people who had found each other through catastrophe. He leaned in, the gravity of his presence pulling me across the space. The first kiss was tentative, a question, a recognition of the spark we had fought to deny. The second was a promise, dissolving the resentment and fear in a fierce, shared current of connection. When he finally pulled back, resting his forehead against mine, I could feel the rapid, unsteady rhythm of his breath. "Go to bed, Alex," he whispered, his voice thick. "We have to finish this business tomorrow. We'll talk then." I nodded, unable to speak, carrying the shock and the sudden, blazing hope with me as I walked, numbly, back to my room. I woke the next morning with the memory of Liam's lips still lingering on mine, a dizzying contradiction to the antiseptic atmosphere of the Atherton estate. The business he spoke of, Julian Vance's final defeat, was accomplished quickly and cleanly. By the end of the week, Julian was publicly censured, facing disbarment, and permanently exiled from the Atherton orbit. The press briefly covered the unfounded smear campaign against the father of the Atherton heir, securing the stable public image Liam had demanded. With Julian vanquished, the external threat was gone, and the temporary truce